Welcome to another episode of the Shaft podcast. My name is Andrews, and I'm here to take you on an immersive journey into the world of African debating. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have you listening in on this specific one. So, whether you're a seasoned enthusiast or just a curious person being a newcomer on this podcast, we hope to make you enjoy this one and leave you wanting to come back for more. In this episode, we'll be profiling an incredible person who, for several successive years, held the African debating space to ransom. He was an absolutely outstanding speaker. And for a lot of you who probably didn't experience her, I wish you genuinely did. Before we start this episode, I want to ask a special request of you to subscribe to this channel. Now, we've amassed over 30,000 views across our first 4 episodes, but guess what? We only have 300 subscribers. Now, we need to lift that to 1,000 by end of November because that's our goal. And we know you would help us achieve this because the bigger the platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So make sure you subscribe and enjoy this episode. I happen to be privileged enough to share the space with her for quite some time and share the stage with her at the 2020 PAUDC Grand Final, which also happened to be my last PAUDC Grand Final as well. And I think it was Anam's PAUDC Grand Final, the final one. So welcome. I've already exposed her name. So welcome to the Shaft podcast, Anam. I'm looking forward to having a very, very interesting conversation with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, for those who don't know Anam, there's a lot more we are going to uncover about her debating later on in the episode. But for you to know a little bit about her, Anam studied at the University of Witwatersrand, which is popularly known as WITS. They were usually the kings of African debates and dominated for quite. She graduated in 2021 and now working as a medical doctor in Johannesburg, South Africa. And she currently has interests that drive her to indulge in economics, interactions with international relations, and arts. Um, Welcome, Anam. It's very interesting to know that you still have interest in things that are slightly related to debate in some way, given that you've retired from debates for some time.
Yes.
So I would start opening this conversation with your retirement from debate. How has it been? Have you enjoyed the sabbatical? Do you still have urges
Um,
to come back to the sport? Or do you feel like you're missing something or the thrill or something?
so I retired, I think in 2021 was my last big debate.
Yeah,
Probably my last one was Korea WDC.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
probably the last time I spoke. Um, it's been it's been good. I think by the time I'd retired, I had sort of achieved everything I wanted out of debate. I've always thought about maybe going back to coaching or doing debating, maybe a tournament here and there. But I think the way I debate is that I feel like debating changes so often. So if you're not
Yeah.
on the ball and if you're not constantly reading and you're not constantly competing and you don't know what kind of arguments are popular in the circuit or you don't know like just different things about the circuit, then I feel like you can't be at your best. So for
Yeah,
me, the
yeah.
debate, I had to be at my best. And I felt like when I took a step back, I knew that I wasn't in my best form.
Oh,
So I think it is tempting to want to go back, but I think I personally really struggle to go back unless I'm going full force.
okay.
So for the years that I did, I was full force. I was
Yeah,
competing a
yeah,
lot and I was
yeah.
reading a lot and I was definitely very, very invested. Um, but I think when I left, I couldn't justify going back because I knew I wasn't 100%.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there are very few people I can point to and say I shared the stage with because I mean there are people I joined the debate with, But there was a period where I could clearly see, okay, I was at this level, but then you look around and sure, there are people competing, but very few people could match you toe for toe and give you a hell of a time when you're in a debate room.
Mm,
And you happen to be one of those few people where I enter a room and I see you and I'm like, okay, you're here. I'm here to pick a fight because there's
yeah.
someone there who is going to bring the fight to me. And I know there happened to be this OG cares thing where you most likely had to be OG in almost every debate you balloted for, and you kind of liked it, right? So for me, it's like having to see you step off the stage and do it so well, be dedicated to it was shocking because it's like one of those people where they have a sensational rise or performance within the space, and then you are always projecting in the next 3 years, this person is going to do this. In the next 4 years, this person is going to do this. Then the person goes completely off course to whatever you were predicting. And then it just
Mm,
keeps wondering, how did she do that? How did she manage to stay so committed to retirement because you've done it so well that you don't do tournaments. You don't pay
yeah.
attention to the competitions, you don't attend them. And even
No.
this weekend, I am doing African Nations League after several months of not debating. I'm back to it with Erasmus. So we are like this in and out of it. I'm just wondering how you've been able to maintain that dedicated mentality towards just staying out of the space because it's a thing a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah. So, I mean, firstly, I don't coach. So,
Yeah,
um, I think for a lot of other people, like I know that other people are still quite committed to coaching, so they still do
yeah,
touch base with debating. For me, I don't coach, so I am like completely out of the debate world because I don't have any interaction in terms of like I don't even think I follow the Facebook page anymore because I'm just that out of touch with it.
yeah,
And it's not like I hate debating or anything. It's really not like I left on bad terms because I
yeah,
know some people do leave on bad terms and then they're just like, no, I hated this. And
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
like
I'm
that.
never coming back.
Yeah. No, it wasn't like that. I just think I had a closure because I genuinely
Okay,
think that I competed for a long time and I competed very consistently. And for me, my goal was to achieve certain things. So I think like for me, my partnership with Lindo was like very, it was something that it is my debating career is like what I was able to achieve with Lindo. So I think that for me and Lindo, we decided together that we had achieved what we needed from debating after HWS. So after HWS, as a partnership, those were our partnership goals because we had won multiple things in our local circuit in the Southern African circuit. Then we'd gone and won things in the African circuit, and then we'd gone to HWS, which is the internet, which is like the biggest international tournament, I would say.
yeah,
We'd competed at Worlds. So when we looked at it, I think the thing is with me and Lindo, we had a very deliberate goal in mind, and I think that's why we were able to do really well. But also like it's why we were able to maintain a goal in the partnership. So
yeah,
even if we had one loss or two, I mean we had multiple losses that were very very painful, but the reason we still came
yeah.
back as a partnership is because we had long-term goals and we
Okay,
established those very early. So we had a projection of what we wanted to achieve over 3 or 4 years that we spoke together. And after HWS, we honestly felt like we had achieved all of those goals, and there wasn't anything else that we could say, this is now our long term goal. So I think when that happened, then there wasn't any reason to compete because there wasn't any direction that I could see it going in beyond what it had gone. Like it was just
that's
like we'd reached what we needed, and
yeah,
so it was just time to focus on other aspects of life. I mean, also, I
that's
guess it helps that I have like a really demanding job right now. So even if I wanted
yeah.
to, I don't think I would have a lot
You
of time
couldn't.
to debate.
Yeah, yeah. For
Um,
me, that's interesting and quite weird at the same time, especially at the decision making point, because I'm imagining within that point, this feeling where we rise up hoping to achieve certain aims. And we always say, oh, humans are perpetually selfish and we always want to achieve more. Maybe it's a popular argument in debate, but in reality, it still applies that you sort of want to get to from 1 to 5, and then you get to 5, and then you are like, wait, but 10 is not that far away. I could get to 10. Then you get to
Mm.
10, you're like, wait, but 15 is also quite in the corner. Right. So I'm wondering if you, at the time you were making that decision and finally deciding that, okay, I'm satisfied, I'm done, I've found closure, you never had those thoughts of, wait, if I attended PADC next year, I would win because nobody would be that competitive within the space. If I attended this competition next year, I'll probably win. If I attended HWS next year, maybe I'd have a better chance of breaking. If I attended WDC next year, maybe I'll do this. None of those pressures got to you. You never had to contemplate on any of those possibilities to maybe sway you a bit of retirement completely.
Um, so when we had those conversations, I think, like, number one, I think it really helps that I was in a partnership, because I think
Okay.
that being in a partnership, like a long term partnership, it really helped because there was always someone to balance when there were maybe thoughts that were either like not completely rational or just purely selfish,
Yeah.
because we were in a partnership, we were able to discuss those things together. And Linda was also like a very reasonable person, and we have like a lot of similar values of life. So I
Yeah.
think it really helps that whenever I had to make those decisions, it was never a decision I made alone. It was always one that I had someone to discuss with. But the second
Yeah.
thing is, I think it was our interpretation of what we wanted out of debating. And I don't think it was ever about the titles. I think it was about understanding. Well, we always used to say that debating is about consuming the world. So it's
Yeah.
about like reading, it's about bettering your understanding of things, bettering, or just being able to be very invested in the world around you, because you know that it might become a debate topic and you might have to discuss it. So for us, we felt like the level that we were at that point, to get to a higher level was going to require things that were not our goals from debating. Like when you get to
Oh,
that high of a level, it's more about like maybe being more tactical about the kind of arguments you run in different rooms, because then it's
yeah.
about like knowing your judges or knowing your audience or knowing like the circuit. It's not about, I feel like it became more
Formation.
restrictive. It wasn't really about
Yeah.
being creative and taking risks. It
Oh,
was about being
okay.
more calculated. And that level of being calculated was just something that I think took away the fun of debating, because I feel like
Okay.
debating for us was always about running like risky arguments, running crazy arguments, reading a lot, and like having, it was always about trying to be out of the box, trying to not just repeat the argument you ran in the previous room and you know will win. It was about like just, really being creative. It
Skinning.
was a creative
Yeah.
space. And I think the level that we were competing, number one, I felt like, well, I personally felt like there was always a lot of pressure to do very well. And I feel like that took away from my ability to be a risk taker, because it was like if I didn't break first or if I
Yeah.
didn't break at
Yeah.
all in this
Yeah.
tournament,
Yeah.
it was going to be like, oh my gosh, I've like, I've already set such a
Build.
high standard, and
Yeah.
now I didn't do that well. So I feel like those kinds of pressures were hindering my ability to be creative. And then I just think at that level, when you compete at that level, everyone is good. So what separates
Yeah.
you is like knowing your judge or knowing, like those kinds of specifics, which, like, honestly, it was taking away the fun of debating. So for me,
Okay.
I think
Okay. Okay.
at that level, it stopped being as creative. And that's why I feel like I was satisfied in what was achieved.
That's a really interesting view on how to think of or to experience higher level debating. And it also just points to the natural fact that people have different experiences, different expectations, or different interactions with different things. So I sort of have a completely opposite relationship with the stages of debating that you have. The earlier parts of taking risks, those parts were less fun for me. But the later parts of thinking, okay, now I feel like we are all equal on maybe information, knowledge, experience, but then I get to invent a new way of beating you. It made me feel I could outthink you in a way you didn't think, and that sort of brought more fun rather than your version where it says it sort of took the fun out because now you had to live to expectations, you had to be more calculative and be more results oriented rather than risk,
Yeah.
and just enjoying the experience. I mean, it makes absolute sense. I get your I now also understand why certain people would make some of the decisions that they make, because usually when you are boxed into your own bubble of interpreting things, you may not really appreciate people's perspectives on them as much. So
I
that's
mean, it was.
really interesting.
Oh, sorry to
Yeah,
cut you off. It was
no
even
worries.
like it was even like sometimes losing finals was so painful, right?
Yeah,
But like we just, I mean, if you take a step back and you see how much you've done in a tournament, like you've broke first, you've won speaker awards, even like it's even about like appreciating arguments that you were able to put out. Like maybe you spoke about something you had no idea about and you put out a really good
yeah,
argument, you won. I feel like at a certain level, like maybe because of the pressure or because of pressure you put on yourself, the tournament was just like, oh, we lost the final. But like,
yeah, yeah,
it's so much more than that. And I feel like when I look at my younger years, even if I'd lost the final, I was still able to appreciate everything else that the tournament
so,
was. But I feel
yeah,
like when you compete at a very high level for a long time and there's always this expectation of you to do well, then it's like losing a final. The tournament is just about the final because it's like
yeah,
you go in there and there's the expectation that you're going to win. So it's just, I feel like when I look back at it near the end of my career,
yeah,
I definitely felt that way. Or even like I think during COVID we competed a lot. Like all of
a lot,
us. We were
a
competing like
lot, a whole
every
lot, every weekend, every
it,
week.
and like honestly sometimes I think about it and I remember it wasn't even only weekends. Like sometimes we were competing in the
Yeah, during the
weekdays.
week,
It was going
during the
like on
week.
Thursday, Friday. It was
In
like
fact, most
crazy.
tournament schedules span from Monday to Friday or Monday to Wednesday, and then there's a weekend tournament, and then there's a week. It was
Like it
crazy.
was
That COVID period
crazy.
was crazy.
Because we didn't even
It
have
was
holidays. We
crazy.
were just competing.
No,
Like we were going to school in the day and then like competing at night. It was like it was actually
it
insane.
was it was crazy. People would miss class. People would get out of a lecture room and go and give a
Right?
speech and go back and sit down and plug their earpiece in.
It was
It
actually
was just
crazy.
crazy.
And like sometimes we had tournaments running on WhatsApp and Zoom at the same time.
Yes,
It was
yes.
wild.
Yeah,
So
so you could speak in the one on WhatsApp and then you could equally speak in the one on Zoom.
exactly.
It's just crazy. Because
So at
that
that point,
experience was crazy. Yeah.
that point I feel like I'd competed so much. Like I felt like I genuinely like I feel like in the top rooms we were just seeing like it was quite consistent. Like the top rooms were generally the same people over and
Same
over again.
faces, same
So
battles.
same battle, same faces. Sometimes it was like someone would be using someone else's argument from the previous tournament in this tournament. So I
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
like the learning curve had plateaued for me because it
Oh,
was
that's
like it
also
was
true.
really fun because we were all like very good friends at that point. But I just felt like it wasn't like the newness and the freshness and the creativity was
That's
missing near the
that's
end.
really true. Really, really true. I think it's a thing that a lot of us maybe didn't pay attention to because we're generally just bored and also just got into the adrenaline of beating someone. But like what you're saying is really true. Within that period, because you had met people so much, um, it became consistent to the point where there was nothing new coming out of the people you were meeting. There were no new experiences. It just became stale, and it was all about bragging rights to just go and
Exactly.
debate. Yeah,
Exactly.
you've highlighted a lot your partnership with Lindo, and I think for a lot of people, debate partnerships probably don't seem to be a big deal. I'm not sure. I think that's majority of people. Majority of people probably don't have this unique connection with a partner for long term, like you may have. And there are several variables that affect that. I happen to have a unique long-term partnership with Erasmus, which for me has a unique way of interacting with my life and the things I do, even outside of debate. I just want to ask, how special was your partnership with Lindo? How did it come about? How did it end? I think we all know how it ended. How did it come about? But then your experience within it, how special was it?
So me and Linda always say we were an arranged marriage. So we actually just got put together. I'd never spoken with Linda before. It
Okay.
was our first nationals. So it was my first big tournament. Actually, her first big tournament in university as well. And WDU, so our debating union, we basically applied for nationals, and then the debating union would put you in partnerships. Most people had a preference for partnership and they got that, but I don't think me and Lindo
Yeah.
had a particular preference. And so we just got put together. So that was the first time I ever spoke with Lindo, is when we were practicing for Nats. And honestly, it was so funny because both me and Lindo were, it was our first nationals. So, and like our first big tournament, we weren't really expecting anything to come out of it. I mean, I even say, like, for nationals, I remember telling my family that I'm gonna be back like on Friday because I knew Friday was the break. So I didn't even anticipate that I was gonna break or anything. And so we went to nationals, and like obviously nationals, especially in Southern Africa at that point, was at
Yeah.
its peak. Like Southern Africa, I think has had maybe periods where we're not as dominant, but at
Yeah.
that point, I think it was 2016, no, 2017, it really was at its peak. So it was extremely competitive. People had, you know, like people had been competing for many years and they'd come to nationals like in anticipation of winning. Anyway, on we did really well in our first round, and then in our second round we were in the top room, and we were like, we looked at each other and we were both just so confused because these were all people who had coached us and like people who we knew were really really good, and we didn't even think we were good. So we were in this room with people that were much older than us, much more experienced,
Yeah.
and we were just like, I remember me and Linda were just like, we're just going to get through this round, we're going to get thrashed, but we're going to get through this round. And we ended up winning that round. And then we ended up winning like the next round, and it kept going. And it was like all these people that we honestly like, we looked up to them so much. And they were all so nice and so supportive. And so on break night, um, I remember me and Lindo, we both went to sleep because we weren't even expecting anything, and the break was so delayed. I don't know, they just kept delaying it until like after midnight. So both me and Lindo went to sleep. And
Yeah.
then I eventually came out of my room like around the time the break was being announced, and I was just standing at the back. And I remember our team name was Fuze, and everyone was like, "Who
Okay.
is Fuze?" Because we broke first, and they were like, "Who's
Wow.
this Fuze team? We don't know who Fuze is." And it was me and Lindo, and so
That's a shock to most people.
it was like a shock to us. It was a shock to everyone. Like, because me and Linda don't count points. We genuinely don't. We try not to debate for
Okay.
outcome. We try to just
Okay.
take it round by
Enjoy the
round,
rounds. Yeah.
enjoy the rounds. Like, it's not like, it's also, we put pressure on ourselves to do well, but it's just not outcomes based. So it's like
Okay.
we will say that we will do the very best we can in every round, but ultimately you can't control an outcome. You can't actually control how the round is adjudicated. You just take the
Yeah.
feedback and you try to get better every time. So the competition is
Yeah.
only with yourself. Well, that's how we always sit in our partnership.
Okay.
So at that nationals, we were also like an all-female team, and for all-female teams to do well is very rare. So we were an all-female team, an all first-year team. So for us to do well was very very surprising, and everyone, I can say this with all honesty, every single person at that nationals and beyond that was extremely supportive. Like No one, everyone genuinely took us under their wings, wanted to support us, wanted to teach us, because they could see that we just genuinely like to debate.
Yeah.
And like, I think maybe we lacked a little bit of confidence, so they really instilled that confidence in us. So anyway, we ended up doing really well at at nationals, and so we committed to a long-term partnership, and then we just never looked back. I mean, I've done tournaments without Lindo, but never big
Yeah.
ones. So never like PAUDC or nationals, or like, we had goals in our partnership. So we decided, like, for example, if we were competing for nationals, we knew that we needed like two or three good tournaments, high quality tournaments, to prepare for that. So we would go
Okay.
to those tournaments. And I think it was just
Okay.
like the whole thing, like having someone understands your direction in debating is
Yeah.
like really important. So I think it took like a mentorship role, almost like how mentors, I guess a lot of people have mentors that will tell them, like, teach them direction in debating. Me and Lindo had
Yeah.
each other. Um,
Oh,
so it was like that. And then also like taking the losses, like having someone who understands your journey and will be there for the losses, also something that I
yeah.
was really grateful for. And someone who understands it like in its entirety, because a loss isn't just a
Yeah.
loss. It's like I've put an
Yeah.
investment in for
Yeah.
years, or like,
Exactly.
even the whole OG thing. Honestly, only Linda would understand that pain, because that was something we went through together. So like it
Yeah.
was just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and then even like, I mean, like minor things, like having someone to travel with. Like every time we traveled, me and Lindo knew that we had each other. Um, Having someone to, like, always be at all the social events with, or like just like the other stuff that comes with debating, always having someone who was there for me, who could who I trusted.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really great to hear. But I want to ask maybe something that it's slightly off board, but being a medical doctor, I can't have you on the podcast and not ask you anything in relation to medicine. So I'm definitely going to ask this. I want to know whether, from your experience, from studies, from profession, I know there are several obvious points of addiction with addictive substances and certain drugs that can hook you onto something. But I've since about a year ago been having this thought about the way in which people really struggle to break away from debate. Is it not addictive? So it's a two-part question: whether sports generally can be addictive, and whether debate is an addictive sport. I mean, you broke the addiction cycle, but by retiring, lots of us are still not broken, have not managed to break the cycle. So I want to know whether sports can be addictive, whether debate is an addictive sport from your assessment as well.
I definitely think it can be addictive. So I think that there's different parts, right? So I think early on
Okay.
in your career, it's addictive because there's a lot of room to grow. So
Yeah.
it's like when you actually listen to feedback that you get. This is also another thing that was very big in mine and Indo's partnership, is we had a book in which we wrote down every single piece of feedback, and we had like a
Yeah.
rule that in our in our partnership, like no matter the outcome, even if we were upset or angry or whatever the case was, we would go to every single member of the Edge panel and get feedback. And I genuinely think that's how we were able to grow for like over the years. In considering that we were a consistent partnership, I think that's how we were able to avoid stagnation, is because we always got feedback, and always honestly tried to internalize it and tried to put it in motion. Like in the next round, Linda would tell me, like, do you remember what the ad said in the previous round? Just like
Yeah.
remember to take that into consideration. So I think in the initial stages, when you actually do listen to feedback and you can see yourself get better and you can see yourself win, that's very addictive, because then you're sort of like, the process of getting better at something and getting closer towards a goal is quite addictive. But I think near the end, honestly, I think it's like like a gambler's fallacy type of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that near the end, my experience, I don't know if you'll agree, but a lot of the time it is a gamble because,
Yeah.
like, in the end, a lot of the time the top room is quite consistent. You've been
Yeah.
competing with the same people over, honestly, over years. You
Yeah.
know what their strengths are, you know what your strengths are. So, and you know that you're on like a similar level. It's not like you're much better than them or they're much better than
Yeah.
you. You all are quite on the same level. So you know that the outcome of the debate is quite like it's a gamble, right? Like it's a gamble on the kind of motion you get and whose strengths it plays to. It's a gamble of the position you get, and whose strengths that place. It's a gamble of the judges. So I think near the end, because you know that it is a bit of a gamble, I think that's quite addictive because you know that it's not like you could win or you could not win, but all of that is subject to circumstances for the most part. I mean, there is
Yeah.
obviously skill, but I think the skill comes in being in those top rooms. But I think that what happens in the top rooms a lot of the time is largely a gamble. So I think it's like
And
that
it's
gambling aspect.
it's those are really two interesting ways to view debating actually. Is it likely that the pursuit of like fame, respect, trophies, recognition, is are those factors also ones that could feed into this consistent pursuit of debating in ways that become very difficult to win you?
Yes, for sure. I also think that it's like a world, right? So it's like a world that
Yeah.
we've been living in for so long. And as soon as, honestly, like as soon as you retire, that world, like that illusion just breaks. Like that world doesn't really mean anything. Like no one who I interact with in the workplace is gonna really, like if they think debating's cool or something, someone who's done one debate in their life and someone who has like a big debate career, to the average person, no one understands the
This
difference
isn't
between
yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
no one knows what it means to go to PAUDC. No one knows what it means to go to WDC. Like they just think like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like that's cool that you were interested in it. They don't understand like how many years of dedication that takes or like what you're able to achieve. So I think it's also really scary to leave that world behind because like once you do, then honestly those years, it's like they didn't mean anything. So I think to continue to keep the value of all the input, I think that's why it's really hard to retire, because the second you retire, then it's just like then you're out in the
Just
world and
vanishes.
yeah.
Yeah, but then this is one maybe one final thing about this addiction stuff is really whether or not we create a dependency in terms of friendships or a social circle. Because I know, and this was my situation for a very long time, where every single person I knew was within the debate space. 90% of my friends were debaters. They were all interested in debating. And it's like you want to have interaction with your friends as a human. You want to be around them. You
Yeah.
want to have fun with them. And the thing they are doing to have fun is debating. They are not doing something else. So to interact with them and to have fun with them, and or even to have similar things to talk about as
Yeah.
friends, debating became the go-to community, which created that dependency. And so usually there was this phase where anytime you are not debating, you feel so lonely because there's you look around outside of debating and you realize who is there? Who am I going to talk to? Who can even understand my experiences in a way in which a debater would? And so is the ability to diversify your friendship pool, the communities that you have people, meaningful friendships outside of debate, have meaningful communities outside of debate. Is that a path if you want to try break that addiction cycle versus still maintaining that exclusive community interactions that people normally have?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's definitely true. I think like also to keep that world alive, right? It's like outside of the debate rooms, then you have people to keep that world alive. So to to understand like what you were doing on the weekend, to understand like what you've been
Yeah,
through over the past few years, you have like friends from the debate space. I mean, a lot of the time, a lot of people do make really good friends in debating.
yeah,
I still do talk to a lot of people in debating. just so that you catch up every now and then, and you have
Yeah,
great memories together and stuff. But I think it's just like focusing on a different phase of life. So like
yeah,
now, like me and Linda are still friends, but we talk more about like things that we do outside, like post debating. And like we
yeah,
can still make debating jokes and stuff, but um, like the nature of our friendship is more like, oh, what did you do at work today, as opposed
yeah,
to
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah,
what did you do at this debate today? Like, it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's not really debating centered. But I think, yeah, it's just a different phase of life. But I mean, you're right. It also, when all your friends are also in debating, it's like it really intensifies the way that you feel like debating is your whole world.
Yeah, yeah. But then I'm thinking about it. If it's an addiction, why don't we have help? Because I genuinely I know there's this equity role, equity concerns in debate where we start thinking about the mental health of debaters and whether or not they are happy, they are okay, they are not experiencing any depressions or anything of that sort. But I don't know. And it sounds counterintuitive for debate competitions or debate organizations to start providing sort of support in line of whether or not you are addicted to debate or not. Because probably for these entities, of course, your constant participation in debate is what helps their existence, whether you're a debate club or a debate organization or whatever. But do you think it needs attention? It's something we should start paying attention to, how people get hooked up onto it and then it's difficult to wean off.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I definitely think people should stop more often to understand their relationship with debating. So I think a lot
Okay.
of the time, like I mean, like at the end of the day, it's not compulsory, right? It's like something you're doing
Yeah.
to better yourself and to have fun. Like maybe some
Yeah.
people are able to get money out of it, but not most people. In fact, for a
Yeah.
lot of people, it's like you end up spending a lot of money in it.
Yeah.
So it's
True.
supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a fun experience, and there's nothing that's tying you to it. So I think people should definitely, and maybe tournaments should, or let me say the culture of debating should be more cognizant in just making people stop every now and then and actually interpret their relationship to debating. Because if it's just making you miserable, and if you feel like you have to win to justify all the input that you're doing, then I don't think you're doing it right. Because, like I said,
Yeah.
getting in the top rooms and that kind of stuff is a skill. But I think the actual act of winning a debate a lot of the time is very arbitrary. So
Yeah.
that's why I always value more, like the way I measure success of debate is more like consistency, because that stuff is very hard to achieve. Like being consistently good, consistently in top rooms, consistently breaking
Yeah.
high is very hard. But I've seen, and obviously I've experienced myself, how much losses can break, like really, really break you, and really like make you honestly have like a really bad relationship with debating and kind of tear down your mental health. So I think people should stop more often and just ask themselves, like, is this really making me happy?
Yeah. That's good advice. Um, so now before we go on a quick break, I just want to ask you a few questions about PADC. I think the first time I ever saw you was at PADC 2018. Just to confirm, were you at PADC 2018? You were, right? Yeah, I'm not sure because the memory I have of you there, I'm not sure we had any meaningful conversations at PADC 2018. But the memory I have of you, the funny enough, it's one of the very first memories I seem to have. It's like you sitting in a debate room or a public speaking room and just observing the round and just sitting and just observing. And I was wondering, I don't know how, or I don't know how that memory keeps up, but I never spoke to you during that competition, but it seems to be anytime I start recounting you, it seems to be the farthest memory I could pinpoint when I started to know who you were. And so you had three PADC experiences, 2018, 2019, 2020. Which one is your best? Which one do you pick as your very best
um,
experience?
which one do I pick as my best experience? Um, the last one was virtual, which
Yeah,
was
2020.
maybe not as interactive. But I think I enjoyed the actual debating of that one because that one was very
Okay.
competitive, and that one was after all of us had been competing in COVID, and so that was after we all knew each other very, very well. So we all knew what kind of arguments were going to come out, and I felt like it was quite a high pressure environment. Um, but that was
But
my PAUDC with Lindo, and I think
yeah,
that that one was I enjoyed the debating aspect of it. I loved Ghana. Ghana was also very, very
yeah.
nice. I
PADC
actually like,
19.
I always say Ghana is actually like my favorite place I've ever been. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
Ghanaians
no,
will be
that
happy to
PhD
hear
was
this.
very nice. No, I loved Ghana. That was, I think the Cadence one was, if I had to choose one,
Yeah.
it's very hard because honestly, all three of them were so nice in different ways. Um,
But
but
you have to
yeah,
choose one.
that one was very nice as well. And then Tanzania was my first PUDC. So Tanzania
That
was
was
a
also my
big
first
learning.
PADC.
Tanzania was a big learning curve. I just remember it being very hot. But everyone was very nice. Everyone was very supportive. I also really did like that one. Oof, it's hard to pick one, but I'm gonna go with Ghana because I loved Ghana. So that's gonna be my favorite PUDC.
Yes. I mean that's amazing because the three PADCs, uh yeah, those are also the three PADCs I did because I also stopped doing PADC after 2020. 2021, I opted out of PADC. 2022, I was DCA. This year, I'm obviously not speaking. Um, so knowing, because I also first PADC was 2018, and I just entered the tournament, just sailing through. And I actually outperformed my expectations. So when I got to 2019, it was like huge pressure uh, on me because 2018 was first attempt. I made semifinals, and 2019 hosting in your country. It's like no, I can't do beyond below semifinals. I can't go below semifinals, and that was insane pressure because I was like, how do I do this? This competition is so different, so tough. Different people, everybody has grown. And I remember our quarterfinal room. The one of the most vivid memories I have of you is you remember the quarterfinal, the results? We waited for so long before they came to announce for our room because they took forever. I don't know what they were doing, but it took forever
Yes,
to
no, they
decide
deliberated forever. I remember that.
for,
And I remember like,
for a very long time. Yeah. And so we were sitting outside and we're sitting on these short walls, you, myself, and then we're just chatting about how the round could go. Why are they? We just wanted to while away time and wait for the results. And then the results came, and I had broken and you didn't. And it was one of the most confusing periods of my life because I wasn't sure how to react, whether to celebrate or be sad because I had a friend sitting by me who didn't break, and we had all along been waiting for the results together, just having this long conversation about the experience of the competition. And my teammate is jubilating. Do I join them, or do I sit and then just get through with you? But for me, it's like that competition was really tough. But I think for me, my best experience was 2020 just because I felt I had reinvented myself for some reason. I just felt I was more comfortable in that PUDC. 2019 was a lot of pressure, so I didn't really enjoy the competition. But 2020 I did because I was more calm, more composed. I probably don't like the results in 2020 as much because I broke lower, but I still enjoyed that competition more. So yeah, I have some pretty good memories. Not all good, especially when the breaks were announced from quarters. But that quarterfinals room was very tough.
yeah.
Was
No, I
really,
remember
really,
everyone.
really tough.
It's like, it's crazy because it was like, I remember our quarter, so many people came to watch. Like, it was
So many people.
packed.
It was
And
packed.
then,
People were standing outside. People were just
yeah,
standing in between spaces. It was
yeah.
packed.
And then while they were all deliberating, all of them were also deliberating. So then all the audience members were coming up to us and they were like,
Yeah,
yeah, how do you think it went
you
and
can't
stuff.
like
So it was an emotional roller coaster actually.
It was. And for me, it's like that's one of the things I hate about debating is getting to be friends with people. Because then I'm forced to do things in a debate room, which I probably wouldn't do on a normal day if I'm friends with you, but I have to do it anyway. Because I remember vividly some comments I passed in my whip speech for that round, and I feel like, nah, that's so bad. That doesn't reflect well on you telling that to people who are friends. But I had to do it because it was a debate round. Then I finished and I'm like, I've still been having like some flashback guilty periods of debate rounds where I've said things that I felt a little bit guilty for saying to friends. So, but yeah, I mean, that quarterfinal is part of my very best, not my very best, like one of the debates I've seen with a lot of so many close performances, very
Hmm.
good speakers all around, and you see everybody asks you this, and then you go like, nah, man, this one they would have to be the judges.
Yeah.
That's why they brought them here because I can't tell how this is going to go.